Isaiah chapter 40, 12 to 31. I wonder if you're a forgetful person. Maybe you're prone to forgetting things. Maybe you've had the experience where you've forgotten where you've parked the car. Or you've forgotten an important meeting, some appointment, and it has just gone completely out of your head. We know what it is, don't we, to be forgetful. The people Isaiah was writing to, it seems that they were a forgetful people. But they hadn't forgotten about a dentist appointment. They hadn't forgotten where they'd placed their car keys. Oh, they'd forgotten something much more important. They had forgotten who their God was. I wonder, could it be you've forgotten that this evening? You've forgotten Him. I wonder if some of us, we go through life and we are forgetful of who God really is. He says in verse 21, "Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth?" And again, verse 28. Have you not known? Have you not heard? And are you hearing it? It's not as if that the people Isaiah is writing to, it's not as if they hadn't heard. They had heard, but they had forgotten so easily. And that was the basis of all their problems. They had forgotten who their God really was, and it brought all sorts of trouble into their lives. And it's much the same with your life and mine. Surely a main reason for so much of our anxiety and so much of our fretfulness is because either we haven't known something of God, or what we have known, we've forgotten. We've forgotten. And so Isaiah is writing to muddled believers, brain fog believers. This is primarily a message for God's people who 2 generations later would have been taken away by the Babylonians. They would have been in exile, fretting, filled with all sorts of troubled thoughts. Look at them in verse 27. "My way is hidden from the Lord," they would have said. "My right is disregarded by my God." And they've forgotten who God was, what He's like. That was their greatest need. If you're not a Christian this evening, if you've a loved one not a Christian this evening, this is your greatest need. This is their greatest need. To know more of who God is. And surely if you are a Christian, we need to know Him more and more. To all of our fretting, to all of our sleepless nights, to all of our troubles, Isaiah 40 comes to us and says, "Do you not know? Have you not heard?" You see, knowing the truth about God really does change. It changes your life. We read Daniel 11 verse 32. "The people who know their God shall stand firm and take action." Our great need this evening is to know more of God. And the picture we have here in these verses 12 to 31 of Isaiah 40, that the picture of God here is quite frankly stunning. It's stunning. Isaiah is painting for us. What's He like? And he gives us this breathtaking picture. "Lift up your eyes," he says. We've tremendous verses here. And with these verses, we bring our time around the Lord's table to a close. And And as we do so, we want to think about 6 truths about God that we go through in this passage. 6 truths. And all along, over the last few days, we've been thinking about comfort in this chapter. These 6 truths, they all ought to bring comfort to us. And so comfort carries through into these verses. So firstly, we see the Lord is awesome. The Lord is awesome. Verses 12 and 15 to 17. 12 and 15 to 17. Verse 12, Isaiah asks, "Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand?" Now, the hollow of your hand, just the hollow, the very center of your palm. Have you ever tried to figure out how much water you can get into the hollow of your hand? Could you even get enough to fill an egg cup? I don't even think we could. God says, all the waters that cover the earth in the hollow of his hand. About 70% of the planet is covered with water. Scientists estimate it to be about 326 million trillion gallons. It's a lot of water. God says it fits into the hollow of my hand. Isaiah continues, "He has marked off the heavens with a span." Now, the span of your hand is from the tip of your thumb to the tip of your little finger. I measured the span of my hands. My hands apparently are bigger than the average. I can span about 23 centimeters. Some of you probably bigger than that. What's the breadth of God's hands? As high as the heavens. As high as the heavens. According to the people with great brains, apart from our sun in the sky, the nearest star to us is 26 trillion miles away. 26 trillion miles away. So little old 23 centimeter me. 26 trillion miles to the nearest star. God says, I measure the heavens with a span of my hands. Are you understanding something of the sheer immensity of God? Now, of course, he doesn't have a hollow of a hand. He doesn't have a span. He doesn't have hands like ours. He doesn't have body parts at all, our God. But he's stooping down and he's using language we can understand so that we can understand more of his greatness. Verse 12 continues, "Who has enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure and weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance?" Verse 15, "The nations are like a drop in a bucket and are accounted as dust on the scales. He takes up the coastlands like fine dust." Verse 17, "All the nations are as nothing to him. They're accounted as less than nothing and emptiness." Before God, not only the mountains and the hills, but the superpowers of the day are like fine dust. Imagine when you're next in the supermarket and you're buying groceries and you have some apples you want to buy, and you take them to the till and the lady puts them on the scales. And imagine as she's just about to put them on the scales, you say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, don't do that yet. There's a bit of dust there, don't you see? There's a bit of dust. I'm not paying for that dust. No, thank you. Wipe that off, please." She would look at you, wouldn't she? She would look at you. It's insignificant. Dust on the scales. It's as nothing. To God, the nations are as dust on the scales. They're like a drop in a bucket. So not a bucket full, just a drop. The kind of drop that remains after you think you've emptied it all out and there's still a drop in it. God says, that's what the nations are like before me. They're like nothing. They're less than nothing compared to my greatness. You see him in verse 16. Lebanon is described. Now, Lebanon was the most fertile place they could think of. Lebanon covered in beautiful trees. It was famous for having mighty trees, the great cedars of Lebanon. And Isaiah says, well, you could gather all the trees Lebanon has to offer. You could make the biggest bonfire you could ever bake. You could get all the animals and make a great sacrifice, and it still wouldn't be worth offering up to God. He is so great, so awesome. And God's saying to his people here through Isaiah, do you not know? Do you not see? Do you not behold this God this evening? Christian, do you not see how awesome he is? Behold him this evening. The Lord is awesome. The Lord is awesome. But then in verses 13 and 14, we see the Lord is all wise. The Lord is all wise. Verse 13 and 14. Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord, or what man shows him his counsel? Whom did he consult, and who made him understand? Who taught him the path of justice, taught him knowledge, showed him the way of understanding? It's really, really helpful, isn't it, to have someone you can ask advice from. A friend, a family member, maybe someone in the church. And Isaiah asks us this evening, well, who did God go to for advice? Did God have to go to someone for counsel? Did God have to go to someone and say, look, I'm thinking of making this universe thing. Is there anyone who could help me, could advise me in this? The very thought is ludicrous. Who gave God counsel? Who is there who can teach God anything? Now, there's something of a loaded comment here. This would have been very applicable to the people of God as they went to Babylon, off in captivity. In Babylon mythology, their creator god, Marduk, they believed that he had to seek counsel from their god of wisdom, Ea. And these gods, Marduk and Ea, they had to work together as a committee, and there was counsel given, one between the other. And there's something of that surely inferred here. These verses are laughing at the gods of Babylon. God saying, I am not at all like that. I am the all-wise God. Everything there is to know, God knows about. He knows the end from the beginning. There's nothing that can be known that he doesn't already know. He knows everything. We know so very little. We know so very little of God. Let's never imagine that we have a great, great knowledge of God. We know so little. We are like children paddling at the edge of a great ocean. He's the all-wise God. And let's not forget that. Let's not forget that when events take place in our lives that maybe we wouldn't have picked for ourselves. When things aren't going according to our timetable, our schedule, he's the all-wise God. His understanding is unsearchable. He knows what he's doing. He is all-wise. Behold this God this evening. He is awesome. He's all wise. Thirdly, he's beyond compare. The Lord is beyond compare. Verses 18 to 20 and verse 25. 18 to 20 and verse 25. Verse 18, to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness compare with him? An idol? You can almost hear the disbelief with Isaiah here. An idol? Are you seriously going to compare this Lord with an idol? You see, the people as they went to Babylon, they would have been surrounded by all sorts of false gods. They would have been tempted to turn to those false gods. And Isaiah is telling them here, hello, this is your God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Not those gods. This God of yours is beyond compare. Look at their gods. A craftsman has to make them. Do you see the reference in verse 19? A goldsmith overlays it with gold and casts for it silver chains. They had to make these little chains for their gods so that they wouldn't fall over, so they would stay upright. What nonsense, Isaiah says. It's absurd to try and portray God, to try and make any likeness to God. This is one reason, of course, why Israel was commanded not to make any images of God, because nothing can come close. Nothing can come close, and if anything, it's an insult to the holy God. Here's Isaiah, and he is pouring scorn on those who make false idols. Compared to God, he says, they're nonsense. He is beyond compare. The challenge comes to us, doesn't it? How many of us have set up in our own lives little idols, something that has replaced God in some form or other? Something we turn to with greater love than we turn to God. That would be an idol. God's reminding us this evening, look, I'm beyond compare. I'm beyond compare. He is awesome. He is all wise. He's beyond compare. A fourth thing, he is over all. The Lord is over all. Verses 22 to 24. Verse 22, it is he who sits above the circle of the earth. Its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. 22 millimeters is the average size of a grasshopper. 22 millimeters, just a little over 2 centimeters. Little tiddly things, so insignificant in the great scheme of things. And God's sitting on his throne, as it were, and the people of the earth are like little grasshoppers. And even the greatest of humanity, Isaiah talks about the princes, verse 23. God brings them to nothing. Some of you keen gardeners might be horrified at this, but our children absolutely love dandelions. They love dandelions, and they love particularly plucking them and blowing dandelion clocks in any and every direction. It horrifies me. Some of you would be very horrified. Verse 24, God says, the princes of the world, the big important people, they're like dandelion clocks to me. I just blow on them, and they're gone. They're gone every way direction. Verse 24, when he blows on them, they wither. The tempest carries them off like stubble. This great Lord, over all. The most important, the most powerful people in the world are as nothing to the power of our God. So friends, we don't need to panic, do we? We don't need to be in a flap over the persecutors of the church. We don't need to spend sleepless nights about and worrying about the who's who in government and who isn't in government. We don't need to fret about those things. Do you not know, Isaiah says, have you not heard? He's the Lord over all. Behold him this evening. The Lord is over all. A fifth thing then, the Lord is the mighty creator. Verse 26 and 28. The Lord is the mighty creator. 26 and 28. Look up into the night sky, Isaiah says. Lift up your eyes and see who created these. Now, he doesn't mention stars, but stars are very much implied. It's quite obvious he's referring to stars here. And again, there's a loaded statement behind this. Stars were worshipped by the Babylonians. They were great astrologers, and they worshipped the stars. Isaiah says, look up. Look at the stars. Count them, will you? Count them. We're told at present there's more than 170 billion galaxies. Each galaxy has between 400 billion and 100 trillion stars. So apparently altogether, that gives you a rough total of about 1 with 24 zeros after it, a septillion. There's about septillion stars. And there's probably more. How many of them can you name? You could maybe name the North Star. That's a safe one. After that, I'm afraid I'm out. That's me. That's my limit, the North Star. Isaiah says, look at your God. Verse 26. He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing. He calls out every single star. He calls them all by name. A septillion of them. Not one of them missing. And he's put them there, and he calls them all by name. Now, to know the name of someone in the Bible is a deep thing. It means to know someone through and through. So God, it's referring to God knowing every detail about every star. Every detail about the whole of the universe known to him. He's the mighty creator. Do you not know, Isaiah says? Have you not heard? Is there something in your life about which you're saying, I don't know if God is able to do anything about this one. I think this situation is beyond God. Is there anything that you think this is too hard for God? This is too difficult for him. I don't think he can sort it. Can he not? He is the mighty creator, the creator of the ends of the earth. He's breathtaking. He's glorious. And our thoughts of him are far too small. The Lord is the mighty creator. But then the last thing you want to pull out from this passage together, verses 29 to 31. This Lord has all the strength you need. He has all the strength you need. Now, Isaiah could have stopped at verse 28. He could have stopped at the stars and the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth. And we would still be left in marvelous adoration. We would be lost in wonder. But Isaiah doesn't, because he's a prophet, you see. He's a preacher. And he's not just concerned to leave us with marvelous truth and marvelous doctrine. No, he wants to press this home, and he wants to apply this to the conscience. So he asks, in the closing 3 verses, are you weak, believer? Are you about to give up? Are you about to give in? Well, look at your God, and you can see here is strength for you. And here is comfort from the incomparable God. He recognizes, Isaiah, that even the best, even the strongest of people, even young men, may grow tired and weary. They may even stumble and fall. All human strength has a limit, it has an end. Isaiah says, do you not know? Have you not heard? There are resources available. Heavenly resources that can be laid hold of by sinners. God gives strength to the weak. He gives power to the faint. This one who sits over the circle of the earth. We don't need to be strong. He's the strong one. Even youths shall faint and be weary. Young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord. Now waiting doesn't mean sitting around doing nothing. It means to hope in God. It means to look to God. It means to expect with God. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. We're maybe not very familiar with eagles, but we see plenty of birds, don't you? Have you ever watched a bird in the air and just the ease with which they appear to fly, and maybe they don't even have to flap their wings, and they're soaring and gliding and effortless. Isaiah says, here's a believer, and they're waiting on the Lord, and it's as if they're soaring heavenwards. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Here's people waiting on the Lord, running, and they're not getting weary. They're walking, and their strength knows no end. So Isaiah is not just reminding us of the greatness and the glory of our God. He's reminding us that this God is approachable. And this God gives strength. And this God gives comfort. Christian friends, this evening, this is your God. This is the Christ of the Bible. He is all power and all compassion. He can be approached by sinners, and he is willing to be approached, and he is ready to give strength. What a tremendous truth. Some of us, we have a tremendous difficulty in life, a great obstacle, but it's no obstacle to him. Some of us, we feel forgotten. We're not forgotten to him. Some of us, we feel so weak to resist temptation. Come to Christ and receive strength from him. Some of us, we feel powerless to keep going in the Christian life. There is strength available. Some of us, we feel as if we're making slow progress. But wait on the Lord, and in time we'll soar on wings like eagles. Some of us, we might feel as if we're hardly able to keep the Christian life going at all. Christ gives power to the faint. You see, there's comfort here for every Christian. There's comfort for the Christian in all his weakness. There isn't one believer who need ever give up. There are eternal resources available. So what a glorious message then. As we conclude this 40th chapter and as we bring our communion season to an end, in a sense, very little of what we've covered this evening has been new. But isn't that Isaiah's whole point? Have you not known, he says? Have you not heard these things? The Lord is the everlasting God. He's the creator of the ends of the earth. You know this. We need to remember this. We need to behold our God, for he is the God of all comfort. Amen.